Ty Dunne, national NFL writer and founder of GoLongTD.com. I saw an article yesterday, and I brought it up on the show, that said that the Bills fans are the smartest fans in the league. What say you?
Ooh, well, I live here, so I have to agree.
Yeah.
Otherwise, friends and family are going to give me hell. I will say they are getting much smarter. I sense a shift in the blind allegiance to Sean McDermott, a coach who just cannot seem to get this team over the hump. I think fans are getting smarter and realizing, no, it's okay to demand more. There was that 17-year playoff drought, and it was really, really bad before Sean McDermott arrived, but it's okay to demand more when you've got the Super Bowl window, and I sense that fans are demanding more. So, yes, I think they are getting pretty smart around here.
Okay. I love that. Is that one of the major storylines? So I know day 2 of training camp at the Bills was underway yesterday. Now we're moving forward. Things to watch. Is it hot seats? Is it players and coaches that really have to perform this upcoming season that have all eyes and all attention on them?
Well, they gave him and Brandon Beane extensions. It was kind of strange. I think that there really wasn't a need to. I believe they had 2 years left on the deal, or at least Sean did. But now they're kind of aligned, and gosh, they're contractually bound through 2027. So I think it is kind of an extension of what we're talking about, how bad it was before with Rex Ryan and every coach, every quarterback who preceded this current regime. But regardless of the contract situation, the seats should at least be simmering a little bit, because look around the AFC. The Chiefs aren't going anywhere. It seems like the Bengals dodged a bullet with Joe Burrow. The latest we saw, it's a calf injury, so he's still in the mix. And you've got teams like the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Chargers. I mean, there's contenders all over the place. The Ravens, the Steelers never go anywhere. So, yeah, they weren't really able to go hand out a bunch of blank checks. They haven't really drafted particularly well, Buffalo that is, and Josh Allen isn't going to be able to play the way Josh Allen does forever. And I think you want him to play that way, right? That's what makes him special. That's what makes him different. You want him running around and doing Herculean type of stuff. So I think they're still a Super Bowl contender, obviously, but the time is ticking. They need to take advantage of this. I think Stephon Diggs' weird mini camp and whatever happened between him and McDermott now behind the scenes is just another sign that urgency should be high around here.
Okay, so let's just wrap up this Diggs thing, because obviously you're there, you're hearing, you're sifting through, hopefully, all the drama. It seems like water under the bridge, but do we know what the main issue was? If you want to put Sparks notes on it, like this happened, now we're moving forward.
Nobody really wants to say. I mean, They had quite a PR disaster back in minicamp, so it was the PR was on point day 1 of training camp, in that staff actually had a press conference and shot down all the different theories that are out there, whether it's his role in the offense, whether it's his amount of targets, his relationship with the coach, the quarterback, and just said they're going to keep it all in-house. So I would just be kind of tapping into the various rumors I've heard. You hear stuff. But in terms of substantive, this is why he was so pissed off, I don't know. I think more than anything, he is frustrated by how these seasons keep ending in terms of, the AFC. Well, he wasn't around for the Texans' comeback win against Buffalo, but then the AFC Championship loss, and then 13 seconds in the divisional round, and then the Cincinnati Bengals no-show. I just think it kind of boiled over, and yeah, and until they get back to that moment, nothing else really matters, right? I mean, I don't think what they do in the regular season, they'll get to the playoffs, but what happens in that playoff moment again? Is McDermott going to punt this team's season away? Are they going to get gashed on defense like they did in so many of these key moments? It's really on the head coach, because now there's no secret. We know he's calling the plays. They gently push Leslie Frazier out the door. That's another weird situation that wasn't exactly clear what happened. I'm not so sure it's as clean and cut as they made it seem to be. But hey, it's all on McDermott, and so yeah, his full circle, his seat should be hot.
So pretty unbelievable scenes at training camp with Damar Hamlin returning to the field, expected to be able to participate in full. It's not often that we see pretty clear comeback player of the year before the season even starts, but that's the situation, and that situation is definitely warranted. When you reflect back on that at training camp, seeing this all go down, does it still sort of stop you in the tracks that this is possible?
It is crazy. I mean, I was in Cincinnati for that game, and I think everybody that was there in person, everybody who saw it on TV Monday Night Football, we didn't know how we could even process the sport itself in our minds, right? Like, if this sport can do this to a human being, how in the hell can it be so central to all of our lives? And nobody knew if he was going to survive. I mean, it's been so long, and Damar Hamlin's kind of been on this world tour, seeing every celebrity, it seems, that we tend to forget just how his life was just hanging in the balance that night. And you're right. I think it is good to kind of take a beat and put this all in perspective, that the fact he's even on a practice field is unbelievable. And look, nothing will be guaranteed. That he's not going to be a starter. He was a fine backup. He's going to have to earn his spot. Now, I don't think they're going to cut Damar Hamlin. Worst comes to worst, maybe they try to get him onto the practice squad at one point or keep him around as a reserve, but you want him in your locker room.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the Bills, if you're any other team, I think what he went through, that perspective alone has got to be worth something, and you could just feel it. I mean, in seeing him out there in OTAs, minicamp, training camp, the fact that he is a part of this team and just seeing him, I think all those players who saw his life hang in the balance and saw the training staff literally resuscitating him, pumping life back into his body, when those same players see him on a practice field, I think it is going to keep everything in perspective all the time.
I know you sat down with Nyheim Hines and you were having wings, which is, it's just the way it goes. And then obviously he had that unfortunate jet skiing accident, going to be out for the season. What type of person are the Bills going to be missing on and off the field with Nyheim Hines sidelined for the year?
Whew. Yeah, I think this was the player that quietly behind the scenes was really working toward a massive role this season. They've got other backs. They'll be okay. Damian Harris is a fine two-down back that's had a lot of success against Buffalo himself. Now he's replacing Devin Singletary. You drafted James Cook in the second round. Latavius Murray's. You've got guys, and they signed. I think Darrington Evans as well. But Nyheim Hines, I mean, this is somebody who can do a little bit of everything. I think that they were going to utilize him in the run game with some of their wide zone stuff and counters. But as a receiver, I mean, he's caught 60, 70 balls in the season before. You saw what he did as a returner in that first game back post Damar Hamlin's, unbelievable survival. He was the one that won you the game against the Patriots. So I think that they were going to unleash him in a lot of different ways. And we sat down, got into it all. He was eager for that role. I think his perspective is pretty remarkable when, he's, as he said, literally seen his mother wither away. She has muscular dystrophy. His uncle has it. His grandmother died from it. Talk about perspective. It's pretty horrifying to just play a football season, come home, and not even recognize your mom because she's losing muscle mass. I think all of this kind of wrapped into one was why Nyheim Hines entered this season with some pretty rare urgency himself. Like he knows the value of every day, and now he is not going to be able to play, at least for this season. And who knows where his career goes from here. I think it is a pretty big loss. It's one of those losses that it might not seem like a lot at first because you think, they got these other backs. He didn't do much last year. But for the offense to kind of evolve and innovate and take a step without signing any really big-name guys, he was that potentially big name that could add a layer of innovation to your offense if you're Ken Dorsey.
So I saw that since it's a non-football injury, that his salary either will just fully get wiped away or they're trying to debate that. What's the situation in terms of his financial compensation that the Buffalo Bills will or will not give him? Because that's a very important part, especially when you mentioned the family dynamic and everything that he has off the field as well. Do you know an update on how they're going to proceed with that?
So glad you asked that question. I mean, this is one of those Really a big part of pro football that nobody really talks about. When these guys suffer injuries and it doesn't involve football, the teams, they don't have to pay anything. And if they don't want to, they can just, say tough, you know what, and let that player suffer. And it's very case by case. It's very team by team. It's very relationship based. If you're a team that values strong relationships with your players, of course, but also with agents, then I think it does behoove you to pay that player. And if we're taking this story as it was told to us, Nyheim Hines was just sitting on his jet ski and another jet ski bashed into him. Now, he is a thrill seeker. We talked about it in the story you referenced, snowboarding and wake surfing and climbing mountains. But he even said, it's kind of eerie listening back. He said back in June, look, I'm taking it easy now because this is too big of a season for me. I'm really not doing anything crazy. And then this happened. So, I think the Bills and his representation are discussing this probably as we speak. I heard that they were actually meeting yesterday, so maybe some news will come out soon. I mean, obviously, Nyheim Hines wants to get paid, and obviously the Bills want to try to save a buck. They just let a valuable member of the organization go, basically the de facto team president, Ron Ricciuta, and they didn't replace him. So that might be a hint that, okay, they're trying to save a little bit of money. I think that whether it's the Bills or any team, if you try to get cheap with your players when they go through something like this and they're already devastated, it's going to send a bad message in the locker room. So they better tread carefully.
Yeah, not a great look either league-wide. It might be kind of the standard, but this game is about, relationships and optics, and it doesn't necessarily look all that great on the Bills if they didn't want to spend or at least help Nyheim Hines out whatsoever. Okay, let's go around the league just a little bit. Aaron Rodgers restructures his deal. Does he deserve, Humanitarian of the Year award? What happened there exactly with Aaron Rodgers doing what I guess he's been reluctant to do in the past, which is kind of help out the franchise that he plays for, make sure it gets talent around it. Did he do something that's a little un-Aaron Rodgers-like by restructuring his deal?
Yeah, I'd say so. After gripping Brian Gutekunst by the neck and kind of dragging him over the coals these last few years, this is quite a departure from the way he's conducted his business personally with his contract. I mean, I think it did kind of draw some frustration out of the Packers, where your quarterback is going on the national airwaves and complaining about not having this player or that player and wanting veterans and privately, publicly making that clear, and then on the other side of his mouth, he's demanding every penny he can possibly get, which is his right. I mean, he was a 4-time MVP. You want to maximize your worth while you can, but you can't have it both ways. And so this could be a way that he is one last time sticking it to Green Bay. It wouldn't surprise me knowing his personality, how he's wired. And, I tend to think this is going to end poorly, and the Jets will finish in last in the division, and he's 39, and if you're not Tom Brady, you just aren't the same quarterback as you age like this. But this is a different personality we're talking about. He could go full heel and really want to stick it to Green Bay on the field with this new team, and maybe this money does open up the wallet so they can go sign a few more players, and maybe he's got one more good season in him. I don't think that's going to be the case when you've got a 38-year-old tackle and another tackle who hasn't played in 2 years. I don't care if you sign Dalvin Cook. I mean, the line is kind of a mess right now. But, hey, you can't underestimate the power of wanting to prove people wrong, and that's always been central to everything Aaron Rodgers is about.
Indeed it has. Okay, so Rodgers trying to stick it to the Packers, and now Sean Payton as a Bronco trying to stick it to the Jets and Rodgers Jets. That was an interesting news nugget yesterday with Sean Payton just eviscerating former members of the Broncos coaching staff. I feel like with Payton, this is the ultimate boom or bust sort of scenario. This is all going to blow up in his face, or the legend of Sean Payton, if you want to call it that, grows just a little bit. But what did you make of his comments about Nathaniel Hackett and others? And is this his version of an impassioned defense of Russell Wilson?
Yeah, he's kind of standing by his quarterback, which we'll see how long that lasts, because if Russell Wilson stinks again, there's a reason they signed Jarrett Stidham, and they'll just plug him in October. They gave him a decent amount of money as a backup. So I do think there's some of that at play to your last point. Number one, I love the honesty. I mean, how often do we just hear these coaches and GMs and players stand at a podium and just say a hell of a lot of nothing? I mean, usually it's just a bunch of word salads this time of year, and, it fills up all the airwaves, and we're just basically making stuff up. I just love the honesty, and I think he is being honest. I mean, he's just saying the quiet part out loud. I mean, Nathaniel Hackett and his offense were an unmitigated disaster. I mean, it's a shock that we're standing here and sitting here talking about the Broncos and not, in a coma, being exposed to their football as much as we were on primetime television last year. It was awful. It was awful. So he's right. It is weird, though, that he kind of threw the GM and the current ownership under the bus, too. And nobody's really talking about that. He was criticizing the Broncos as well. It all points the finger back at Sean Payton for this year, though. That's why I don't really have a problem with it, because he's the one now that is going to be held accountable. I mean, he'll face all scrutiny. If this doesn't work out, it's on Sean Payton. He's not hiding from any of that. And like I said, honesty, yeah, sign me up for it any day of the week.
Yeah, we love any preseason narratives that help us. That week 5, that matchup will be absolutely electric. We're talking to Tyler Dunne, national NFL writer and founder of GoLongTD.com. Have you been watching the Netflix series Quarterback?
I'm ashamed to admit I have
what
not.
What are you doing?
We're
You're too busy
working.
working.
Because we're late to the party on Succession. So if we're fitting TV time and we're watching Succession.
I accept that. That's fine. Finish Succession and then we'll chat. But we've just been seeing that some quarterbacks don't want to participate in it this upcoming season. A couple have already said they don't want to. If you were to choose a quarterback, it's pretty intrusive. You follow them around their house. You're up in their business. You go game to game with them. It's a full expose of their life. Is there a quarterback that you would love to see do that? And is that Josh Allen?
Well, I assume that the Zach Wilson version would have to run on HBO Max. We wouldn't get that on Netflix because we wouldn't. That might be maybe that's even a little too risque for HBO. What would be interesting is, gosh, I'd say Aaron Rodgers, but it'd have to be the unsanitized.
Yes.
Just he can't have editorial control, and it almost have to be like hidden cameras. So let's see what Aaron Rodgers is really like behind the scenes. But he can't really have a say in crafting a narrative, which is very, very central to his motivation. So I want to know, what is he really saying to teammates, really saying to coaches, really saying to family? Well, he's not talking to his family, so we don't get that aspect of it all. I'd love to get some authenticity out of Aaron Rodgers.
That would be interesting. Maybe HBO Max worthy as well. Okay, so we've been talking about, the Bills, the Chiefs, and the Bengals eyeing each other up for some time here for a couple seasons now. We've been talking about sort of the AFC and where everything lands. Based on what we saw this offseason, based on what we've seen here in the very few days of training camp, how would you order them? How would you sort of assess what they've done to improve? When these three powers are butting heads continuously, who's sort of in an advantageous position out of those three for you entering the 2023 season?
I think Orlando Brown does swing a little power over to Cincinnati, stealing him from Kansas City at a premium rate. Let's see what's up with Joe Burrow's health. I think all three teams are going to be in the mix. It's hard for me to bet against Patrick Mahomes. I know that's a simple answer, but if he's going to lead his team to a Super Bowl on one good leg, what is he going to be able to do if he's actually healthy in that moment? But I'm going to throw a fourth team into the mix. I love the Miami Dolphins this season, and that this could come back to haunt me or anybody who buys stock in this team, because it all hinges on Tua Tagovailoa's health. One more concussion, and who knows, his career could be over, and he suffered other injuries too. But you look at their 12 or 13 best players, and they've got probably the most talented team in the NFL. Both sides of the ball just loaded with 5-star dudes that are a problem. I mean, we know what they have on offense, obviously, with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, Tua, an offensive line that's improved a lot, and one of the best play designers in football, Mike McDaniel. I think they'll find their counterpunch. But now you've got Vic Fangio on defense as your defensive coordinator. they're not going to have Jalen Ramsey for a bit with his meniscus, but even that, Bradley Chubb, Xavier Howard, I think they signed David Long. They've got Christian Wilkins. They've got a lot of players that if you're an offensive coach, you are talking about as your game plan. And I don't think Buffalo can really say that. Kansas City, if their young guys, can grow up quickly, they played well in the playoffs in the secondary. And in Cincinnati, they lost a few more in free agency. Miami might have the best defense out of those four teams. And so, yes, if Tua can stay healthy, I wouldn't be surprised if Miami gets to the Super Bowl.
Yeah, I think we're willing to accept a fourth horse in the race for the AFC, make things interesting for sure in the AFC East. Okay, last one for you. Of course, running backs have been at the heart of the conversation here leading into training camps. We're under a week away from the first snaps of preseason football, which is crazy to say. But there are some guys that are still looking for deals, some guys searching for money at the running back position. There's a coalition, or there was talk of a coalition. There's, above anything else, some angst in the running back community. Is there any long-term solution here for making sure that these guys who might be the best athletes in the game aren't just considered somewhat disposable by their teams?
I think there is a glimmer of hope, and maybe I'm a hopeless romantic when it comes to running backs because, right, we all grew up on somebody. Barry Sanders, and God, as a young Packer fan, you had Edgar Bennett, Dorsey Levens. We all can remember our favorite back growing up. But obviously the position is what it is now. I'm sure you've gotten into all the metrics of it. It's kind of remarkable that they're paid less with the franchise tag than they were 5 years ago as every other position skyrockets. I do think, though, the NFL is all about evolution in terms of play calling, and I think that next evolution could be just running the ball down a team's throat. You look around the NFL, a lot of 220-pound linebackers, a lot of linebackers, trained psychologically to defend RPOs, so they're kind of thinking a little bit and backpedaling off the snap. Even up front on the defensive line with the wide zone blocking scheme, I think a lot of these D linemen are kind of trained to bear hug offensive linemen and just kind of shuffle down the line to clog gaps. So if you're an offensive coach, hell, just treat it like it's 1994 and hit the gas. Just send your running back on a simple power play upfield. And look, we saw Atlanta draft Bijan Robinson. We saw Detroit draft Jahmyr Gibbs. These are players you can kind of line up all over as well and unleash them at some pretty, unorthodox angles within your scheme. You add it all up, and I think that if the running backs do kind of take back the NFL, prove they're valuable, and a team wins a Super Bowl with a running back that's central to it all, not an Isaiah Pacheco who's a seventh-round pick, maybe that player does get paid. And then it's going to take, okay, you paid that player, and then you were able to keep winning. Only then, I think, does this really change. But it could, but that's a lot of dots to connect as well.